You don't quit at the beginning. You quit near the end. Right when something is almost finished, you slow down, distract yourself, or quietly walk away. It's confusing because you wanted this, and the closer you get, the heavier it feels. Not because you're lazy, but because finishing changes something about who you are. You start things with energy, a project, a plan, a version of yourself you feel drawn to. At first, it feels open, flexible, full of possibility. But as it gets closer to completion, your thoughts change. You start questioning details that didn't matter before. You notice flaws that suddenly feel unbearable. You tell yourself you'll come back to this later. Later turns into silence, and the unfinished thing just sits there. Not gone, not alive either. This pattern doesn't just affect projects, it shapes your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone with potential, someone who could be many things, someone who hasn't committed yet, and that can feel safer than being someone defined. In relationships, you may pull back when things become real. In decisions, you hesitate when a choice would lock something in. In your self-talk, you say you just need more time. But time isn't the issue. Something else is happening underneath. Here's the part most people miss. Avoiding completion isn't a lack of discipline. It's a form of protection. Your brain learned at some point that finishing things carries risk. Not physical risk, identity risk. Once something is finished, it can be judged, measured, compared, and more importantly, it represents you. So your brain does what it's designed to do. It tries to keep you safe, even if that safety costs you progress. To understand this, you need to understand how the brain treats identity. Your sense of self lives largely in the default mode network, the system that constructs your personal story. When something is unfinished, it stays in the realm of possibility. Possibility is light. Possibility has no final shape. But completion collapses possibility into reality. Imagine your identity as a fog. Unfinished things stay inside the fog. They're soft, undefined, protected. Finishing something is like turning that fog into a solid object. Now it can be picked up, examined, accepted, or rejected. Your brain doesn't fear effort. It fears finality, because finality forces an update to your self-image. There's another mechanism at work too: prediction error. The brain is always predicting outcomes. When you finish something, you create a moment where reality might not match your expectations. If past experiences taught you that visibility leads to criticism or success leads to pressure, your brain learns to avoid the moment of truth. Not consciously, automatically. So right before completion, motivation drops, distraction increases, self-doubt spikes. Not because you don't care, but because your nervous system senses exposure. This isn't about forcing yourself to push through. That usually backfires. Instead, you work with how the brain handles identity and threat. The first shift is separating the work from the self. You mentally label what you're finishing as an experiment, not a verdict. The brain reacts less defensively when outcomes don't threaten identity. Instead of thinking, "This proves what I'm capable of," you think, "This is version 1, data, not a definition." The second shift is finishing badly on purpose. You decide in advance that the final version will be imperfect. Perfectionism keeps tasks in the fog of possibility. Allowing imperfection lowers the emotional stakes of completion. You submit it without one last rewrite. You stop before it feels ready. Not to sabotage it, but to release it. The third shift is delaying evaluation. You create a buffer between finishing and judging. Immediate evaluation spikes emotional threat.
Delay allows regulation to settle. You finish the task and do nothing with it for a day. No rereading, no feedback, just space. Your brain learns that completion doesn't equal danger. The fourth shift is naming the identity fear. You ask quietly, if this is finished, who would I have to become? Naming fear engages the part of the brain that reduces avoidance. You might realize finishing means being seen as serious, committed, no longer figuring it out. And you see that it's that shift you've been avoiding. The fifth shift is practicing symbolic endings. You finish small things deliberately. The brain learns through repetition. Safe endings retrain your nervous system. You close tabs, archive old notes, complete short tasks fully. Each ending teaches your brain this is survivable. Here's the model to remember. Unfinished things protect identity. Finished things expose it. Your avoidance isn't random, it's learned. And learned patterns can be updated. When you lower the identity stakes of completion, your brain no longer needs to pull you away at the last moment. Completion stops being a threat and becomes a transition. Not from potential to failure, but from possibility to presence. You don't avoid finishing because you lack follow-through. You avoid finishing because endings change who you are. And your brain has been trying to protect you from that change. But not all change is loss. Some endings don't shrink you. They anchor you. And maybe the next thing you finish isn't proof of who you are, but permission to finally step out of the fog.